Here.
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 Madam Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. If you please stand for the invocation, Reverend Anderson.
We pray, God, we thank you for this day. Thank you for this very hour. Thank you for this board member and this Economic Development Corp. We pray that you give us guidance on the things that we should do that will be beneficial to the people in this community. So in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, I'd like to welcome Councilmember Moses to our meeting. Thank you for being here. If you will, we'll move forward to our minutes from the November 6th meeting. All of you have had an opportunity to read them.
Move they be approved.
It's been moved and second to approve the minutes of the November 6th meeting. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. We'll move on to communications. Mr. Baptiste.
Yes, Madam Chairman, Commissioners, today you have the Chamber Annual Banquet on January 24th. I think we normally buy a table for the banquet. And I would recommend that we buy a table, and most of you guys, it's in the afternoon, so.
Would your mic, please?
It is in the afternoon. I would suggest that we all, show partnership with our partners, the Chamber, and be there in support of the new chair.
I agree. Thank you.
Move we buy a table.
It's been moved and second that we purchase a table at the Chamber banquet. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries.
The second communication you have, Madam Chairman and the board, is a letter and the invitation. We spoke to you guys about having this community vision workshop, and this is the letter we composed and the invitation that we're going to be mailing out. I think there's about close to 80 folks now, Joni? About 80 participants that we're going to be mailing this letter to for this invitation. Mr. Finkel have accepted to come for the 2 days, so just making you guys aware of what's going on. Yes, sir.
For the record, what organizations are being invited?
We have invited the city, the Drainage District, the Navigation District, the Port, the School District, the Sabine Pass Independent School District, Toccoa Academy, and Bob Hope Academy. PISD also, yes, sir.
When you say the city, you mean city council members? Will there be anybody else representing the city there, like the any city staff or anything like that?
Whatever.
The city decides. Okay.
I think, well,
What we noted was their board members and whoever their director was or CEO of the organization.
Okay. So it would be city council and the city manager.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
and I think our goal is to have these letters out next week.
Well, it's January 31st, so yes, by the end of December, we want to give them at least the 4 week. So by the end of the month, we'll definitely have it out.
All right. Thank you. We have had some traffic issues coming into Port Arthur in our city. Our attorney is stuck in traffic, so we'll move on to those agenda items that will not reflect her input at this time. We'll move on to agenda item number 4. Mr. Baptiste.
Yes, Madam Chairman, it's to discuss possible consideration into an agreement with Florida Group Development floor group, I think last week, Renata, you guys had a conference call? Yeah, can you give them an update on what's going on?
Good evening. As you guys know, and I'll refresh, about a year ago, Mr. Baptiste and I attended a trade mission in California. And he and I actually went on a trade mission to bring businesses back to this area. In doing so, some were successful, some weren't successful. I attended the TEDC conference about roughly a month and a half ago, and I ran into a representative of the Floor group, which is the group that we actually went through the first time with Dawn Floor. She kind of ran down, asked me a few questions, how did they do, did we get a return on our investment, how were things, when we went down to California. Well, she and I started talking, and I kind of gave her feedback on what happened, how it was set up, and we talked about doing another proposal. However, this time we have it's one proposal, but we have 4 options. And what we're asking tonight is, I'm asking that we focus on one option, which is the national and international campaign. We did the trade mission, Mr. Baptiste and I, and like I said, was very good. It was a lot of hustle and bustle, meeting with CEOs, CFOs, in the midst of it all, we actually ran into one company who was very familiar with Port Arthur, and they actually had interest in our community. This time around, once again, I'm asking for the national, international campaign. And if you have this in your packet, if you turn to, it's the first one behind the actual proposal, includes the following strategies. Pretty much the national international campaign will allow us to business recruit on a national, international level. What the goal is that we have to choose a market that we want to focus on, whether it be plastics, whether it be distribution, whether it be manufacturing, whether it be aerospace, whatever it may be, whatever fits the needs or what the skill set is in our community. And I'm asking that I'm proposing that hopefully that we will go with this one for the simple fact that we don't have to get on a plane and fly everywhere. They do everything pretty much in-house. They create a website. They give us a 1-800 number. We're able to actually manage like the statistics part of it. Pretty much, it's basically, if it's a go, then we actually get on that plane and we go meet with that CEO, that CFO, or that decision maker. It's not jumping on a plane, going to 8 or 10 business calls within a week. It's pretty much a one-on-one. It's solid. You're guaranteed. And if we feel like it's a qualified lead, then we pay the $500. And I think before we did the 12.5, which is $12,500, and each qualified lead was $500. And last time we did get, I followed up with the references. They have a lot of economic development organizations that really, they're for it. They've used Floor. It's been very good. They've saw their return on investment. They've had companies to actually come to their area and relocate. And I'm just asking tonight that you guys consider doing the national international campaign, which will allow us to business recruit on that particular level.
Thank you, Renata. Any questions, Mr. Stickler?
You've already spent money and used them before, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Did we get any return on that?
Actually, when we did
monetary return?
No, not the first time around. Okay. Because the first time around, it was kind of like how can I put it? No, we didn't.
How much money did we spend with them?
The last time we spent the same amount.
12.5?
12.5.
And got nothing for it?
Actually, no, because we felt that the leads that we came back with weren't qualified leads, or it was 2 of them that we didn't have what they needed. One was a manufacturing company, one was an actual distribution company, and we couldn't fit the demand of what they needed because it was we just couldn't fit the demand. And also we actually had 3. One was a clothing manufacturer, but was it the ink, Mr. Baptiste? It was something with the dyeing. We couldn't fit the need. So.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Do you think it'd be beneficial to do it again?
I think so, for the simple fact that this time around, we're not hustling and bustling going from here to here. It's pretty much you're dealing with one client, it's guaranteed, and it's up to us if we qualify that particular lead. So basically, like the last time we went, it was strictly, distribution, manufacturing. And Mr. Baptiste and I said maybe this time around it may be another, something else that we can focus on. But you're guaranteed to actually meet with this person. They know, and I'm saying it to say this, when we went to California, it was a couple of businesses that they pretty much had their mind set on the community, and as if they didn't know that we were actually coming out there. And that's what I explained to the lady that I met at EDC, that we're not going to put out that type of money and we don't have that particular lead, knowing that we're coming, because we're thousands of miles away. So this particular option allows us to actually market here. And once Mr. Baptiste and I, once he decides if it's a qualified lead, then we'll fly, we'll meet with the CFO, CEO, and see if we can meet their need.
Mr. Smith?
That's when you pay the $500
Yes, sir.
if you decide.
And like the $12,500, I will say that last time they did create a separate website. It was a very good website. It was straight to the point of what the site selector and the consultant looks for. And also, they have a 1-800 number to where if you need to call, like if the site selector or the decision makers calling in, they can actually, manage that and have those statistical numbers on, who's calling, what the interest is, what the demand is, what type of company it is, and so forth.
Has Floor already identified businesses that would be would fit into what we do here?
Yes, sir. That's what they do. They do that for a living. Like, I'm just giving an example. The last time, we told them what we wanted, what the fit and what the need was, and they actually set up one-on-ones with, say, like a computer manufacturer, or whether it was somebody that was like aerospace, or I'm not going to say aerospace. It was one that dealt with was it the airplanes? Yeah, they made airplane parts. So yes.
So what would make this time different? Make this time different. What's the difference?
What will make this time different is because the last time we went out there strictly focused on California, the California market. They were saying, hey, California is moving to Texas, let's bring them here. This time around, it's everywhere. It's California, if we want to go to Australia, if we want to go to England, it's on a national level. The last time they kind of kept it on a more United States type level. So we can go international, we can keep it, regional, we can go.
Let me ask this question. There are expansions of a couple of international canals connecting Pacific to the Gulf of Mexico and those type things, where there won't have to be trucking of products or cargo from the West Coast to the East Coast. So I know there's some places or some entities that are looking for a place where there is port space, port capacity to help with those types of things. So can we get this company to focus in on something that where we can actually get the facilities that we have that are being expanded here in Port Arthur to fit with what some companies who are on the West Coast or wherever, to actually fill that need for cutting down shipping costs by locating here, which would facilitate them moving here, because it would cut their expenses. It would actually open up more markets to them on the East Coast. And I'm just asking because I think we need to be more specific in which companies or which which type industries we go after to come here.
And I can attest to that. Like, basically, what we've done in the past is say Mr. Baptiste and I will sit down and say, hey, this is what we want to focus on. Well, it will be, I guess, pretty much he and I would actually come up, and maybe he can discuss it with, of course, his board. What do you guys want to focus on? Like, what do you guys want? What companies do you want to bring here? Like, what do you want to alleviate? What do you want to expand upon? So that would be something that we would all have to come together and agree on of how, we want to move forward, because a part of economic development is growth and creating jobs. And so that's something that we have to do. And, recruitment is a big part of it. It takes a while. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's something that we have to do.
I have one more question. Are our odds of gaining new businesses in this area better with this company or without?
I'm going to say with this company.
We spent 12.5 with them, didn't get anything out of it. Could you check with them and see if they'll work with us on the price? I mean, maybe we can get a little bit of value of what we spent them and didn't get any value from at all.
I can check with them and see, but as of right now, 12.5 is the going rate, and pretty much out of all of
we blew 12.5 with them.
Well, actually, no. Last time, didn't we? Wasn't it a little bit? The cost kind of. We kind of went in and kind of negotiated the price.
I think that's what we ought to do this time.
Another question?
I just want to make sure the 12.5 that we spent last time, it was well spent. Even though we didn't get any business, you learn from that experience. So if we go back with them this time, they're going to do all the leg work. You're not going to have to get on a plane at first and go here and go there and try to sell this. They're going to do all the leg work, then you look at it. And if it's not what you want, then you don't have to pay the money.
No.
Okay, that's what.
Any other questions? Okay, any other questions? Do we have a motion? Your mic, please.
I make a motion that we approve it.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve agenda item number 4. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries. Agenda item number 5. Mr. Baptiste?
Yes, number 5 Earlier today, the subcommittee, Mr. Smith and Mr. Anderson met, and I guess you guys can make your recommendation to the board.
I make a recommendation that we pass the microloan for Ms. Jones in the amount of $14,000. Yeah, okay.
I second that.
Question. What's going to be the interest rate for the loan?
Prime.
4%, sir. And one of the discussions the subcommittee had was the repayment. They recommend that our maximum is 5 years, is to keep the note low and go 5 years to keep the overhead down. If the applicant could pay more, they pay more, but we want to keep the overhead low so they could maintain their business.
So was that by way of a motion? It's been motioned and second to approve the microloan. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Agenda item number 6.
Yes, Madam Chairman, item number 6 is a letter of intent from Q Production LLC. It is a what's the word? It meets your NAISC code. I would ask you guys just let me go ahead and do my due diligence on this thing. The request is, you guys see the requests, but once we do the due diligence will tell you guys what it's really worth or what we could do.
Second.
Been moved and second to allow Mr. Baptiste to move forward in the Phase 1 application for Q Products and Production Companies. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries.
Madam Chairman, our attorney's still not here. I guess we could start into the... What about the reports? That's what I'm saying.
We'll move to reports, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Marketing. We'll move to operational and then financial. And then, Mr. Baptiste, do you have a report so we can move forward?
I'm going to do the financials. Crystal out, her kids out, and Rachel, if you guys don't know, her father is hospitalized right now. But I do have the financials. Here it is right here.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm going to concentrate on, as you see, your year-to-date, 2017, 2018, each line item is the amount of money that we have spent on each line item. Thus far, for the fiscal year, we spent a little over $500,000. Most of that money was for KV Venture, little over $326,000 of the $500 was spent on that development. On the sales tax, if you look at it, the month of November reporting was $1.4 million that the city received. Of that $1.4 million, you guys received $580,000, and you put $193,000 into the street and maintenance tax. Last year, you actually gave the city $1.170,000 into the street maintenance tax. That's what we gave them last year. This year, in 2 months, almost $200,000. The other part of this report I'm going to give, remember you guys approve us of us going to get this, where we could look into the sales tax. Well, it will tell you current collection is about 11, just about 11% up. And if you look at the second page, I went down and I look at different industries, and you could see what it's telling me. Retail is up, manufacturing is down, professional services down, wholesale is down, sales tax coming from those industries are down. And I could actually go into it and look at each of those businesses that comprise us. So it tells me a lot about what's going on in our communities. But this was just one of the many reports that I could give you guys. The other thing, and I'm working with the city because I could also see those who are not paying the taxes. So if the city want to collect their taxes, it's called an audit report, where we could actually go say, you have a sales tax number, but you haven't paid no tax to the controller. So we could, go after those folks. It's a very good software that we have. Spend a lot of time on it. But that's your financials. I think we're moving along real good with the financials. If you look at your financials, you spend about 12% of your money. 12% of your money. If you look at each line item, it averages about 12% of it. So you still have 89, 88% of it still for the remaining of the year. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Any questions?
So that software was a good investment.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It gives a lot of information. A lot of the stuff I will not be able to hand out
Share,
because
right.
it's.
Absolutely.
Right.
Right. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Baptiste?
Yeah, just one question. The software, what's the name of that software again?
Zac Tax.
Zac Tax? And
Yes,
this
sir.
is, who actually produces this?
It's a company called Zac Tax, and with that, we have given them permission through the city. Remember, the manager had to sign off on this thing, where the controller gives our sales tax records to them, and they go in there and massage it and tell us what's in that, what make up that sales tax. So we're able to see just about everything that's going on with sales tax, where it's, who's paying sales tax, who's not paying sales tax, if it's going up or down, the sales are going up or down. It gives us a better tool to do business retention. Like right now, I know why. When you look at this report, and you look at manufacturing, you know that we just came through a storm. Manufacturing was down, but I expect that to come back.
And that was one of the questions I wanted to ask. I was going to ask it offline, but I'll ask it now. Is because of the storm and all of the expenditures that are taking place here within the city limits on building products and everything, we're going to see it. We should see a significant increase in sales tax in that category.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There is a very significant. And if you look at it, if you look at the little report I gave you guys, it's under retail. No, yeah, under 20, about 21% increase. Yeah, and it breaks it down by store. I can tell you what's going on out there.
That 21%, is that compared to 2016?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any other financial questions?
The only other thing I want to mention, we met, about a month ago, myself and Crystal met with the plant managers from the 9 plant managers with the Port Arthur Industrial Group. 2 days later, I think, Ms. Holm, were you present? The chairman of that plant manager is now Valero plant manager. He did come to the office and meet with us, and I think we had a very good discussion, and I think things may be moving forward. That's all I have.
Any other questions? Renata?
Escape.
Okay.
Oh, that one?
Okay, pretty much what's been going on, a lot's been going on. I was actually at EDC maybe like a month ago, met with a lot of my counterparts. A lot of things are going on, a lot of changes coming, talked a lot about autonomous vehicles, the future. It's going to take about $1 trillion for everybody just to get, this is the future I'm talking about, $1 trillion for people to get where they need to be in the future for each community. And I'm speaking inner cities first and then trickling down to the smaller cities. A while back, I know you guys, I showed you, I think we started off with the energy wrapper. The energy wrapper is up. It looks really, really good. I advise you guys to go to our website, go into our site selection tool, and our tab, and click on it and actually look at our wrapper with energy. It looks really, really good. Also, had a couple of conversations within the past couple of weeks. We're going to be featured in 2 magazines, one being FDI Alliance and the other one being Expansion Solutions. Those are both international magazines where we will highlight what we're doing in Port Arthur. A lot of people have been calling since the storm. They want to know, what are we going to do to get back to normal? And so going to have to come up with some verbiage on what the future looks like for Port Arthur. And looking forward to doing that. Also, I had a meeting a couple of weeks ago. Of course, you know, we do pay a particular amount of monies towards READY, which is the Regional Economic Development Initiative Group. And every year, you and I attended the forecast breakfast last year, and it's a very, very good breakfast. It kind of basically sums everything up and what to look for in the future. It talks about, you know, just economic impacts, the return on investment, not just in Port Arthur, but through the whole region. And so met with, I'm a part of the marketing committee, and so we're actually coming up with a marketing video to highlight at that particular breakfast. And I encourage each one of you guys to, I'll get you more information, but to be a part and come to that particular forecast breakfast, because everybody is there, and anybody that's on any type of board that deals with economic development really needs to be there, because it really highlights and gives you an insight of what's going to happen and what's going on. The keynote speaker this year will be Dr. Ray Perryman from the Perryman Group, and the topic this year is Road to Recovery. So that pretty much concludes my report.
Thank you, Renata. When is it? When is
The forecast breakfast will take place in January. It's going to be at 7:30 at the event center.
January do you have a date?
13th. I'm sorry, January 17th at 7:30.
17th?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. I'm sure you'll send us something, Mr. Bentis.
I just received something, so I'll send it out.
Thank you. Any other questions for Renata? Okay, thank you for being here. I know it was hard getting it. No, not at all. We understand the traffic. I understand it was really bad. Yeah. Well, we went ahead and went through 3 of the agenda items. There was some we wanted you to be here for. So we'll start with agenda item number 1. Mr. Baptiste.
To discuss possible consideration for enterprise for infrastructure improvement, which will promote or develop new or expanded business enterprises.
I had to recuse myself from this agenda item, since I will be the contractor for this project.
Certainly. Thank you.
As you all know, y'all approved proceeding forward with an incentive with Park Enterprises for a pharmacy and a retail location. This incentive is it's just infrastructure. It's not based on job creation or anything. And so the Development Corporation Act requires the board to make fact findings, basically stating that the infrastructure development will increase the ad valorem tax value and sales tax revenue to the city. And so you'll find in your packet the facts and the findings that I propose to you guys. There might be in the handout.
Okay. But it was on the desk. It was on the...
Yes, and anyways, before we can approve the incentive, you guys need to make the fact findings. So if someone would want to read them into the record, and then we can have a motion in a second.
Facts. ARC Enterprises, Inc. has requested an incentive agreement for PA EDC for infrastructure improvements to construct a pharmacy and retail tenant space at 6770 9th Avenue in Port Arthur, Texas. Fact. PARC Enterprises, Inc. wants to make infrastructure improvements in order to make it suitable for commercial tenant space, which will house a pharmacy and a retailer. Findings. The PA EDC Board of Directors has found that constructing infrastructure improvements at 6770 9th Avenue in Port Arthur, Texas would lead to the development of new and expanded business enterprises in the city of Port Arthur. The infrastructure improvements may lead to the opening of 2 new businesses in the city of Port Arthur. Final finding, the opening of such businesses would increase sales tax revenues for the city of Port Arthur and add to the city ad valorem tax base.
Now we just need a motion on the findings in a second.
I'll move.
It's been moved and second to approve agenda item number 1. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Any opposition? Motion carries. Agenda item number 2.
Yeah.
Mr. Baptiste.
Item number 2. possible consideration of the terms and conditions for the economic incentive agreement with PAR Enterprise, Inc. And Kate, we provided you guys with a copy of the agreement. There's a few little language changes that Kate and I went through today, but the content of the agreement is there. I think it's just, you want to tell them about some of the language change?
Yes, the language change was mainly just making sure the agreement discussed the construction of a new building versus the redevelopment of an old building, and you'll see that the milestones or the performance that they have to do whenever they complete 60% of the space, which is approximately 3,650 square feet, they'll get 60% of the incentive amount, and then whenever they complete the 2,434 square foot commercial retail space, they'll get the remaining part of the incentive amount, which would be 40%, and the total incentive amount is $195,750. And I believe they have, is it 36 or 18 months? I can't remember
I
now.
think we gave them 2 years.
2 years. 2 years.
2020.
Yes, to complete it,
Yeah.
so.
He needs to recuse himself again.
I recuse myself.
Agenda item number 2. May I have a motion?
Make a motion that we approve it pending the changes that need to be made.
Second.
It's been moved and second to approve agenda item number 2, pending the changes that need to be made. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries. Agenda item number 3. Mr. Baptiste.
Number 7, to discuss for possible, discussion.
3. Number 3.
Sorry. To discuss for possible consideration terms and condition of an economic incentive agreement with AWC. Again, Kate prepared that contract for us.
Yes, I prepared it. This agreement is total reimbursement. That's why you won't see any sort of collateral needed, because they have to meet the payroll requirements as set out in the performance milestones before they'll receive any amount of the incentive. You'll see in 7 performance milestone schedule and see by 2018 they have to have an annualized payroll of $235,000, and that'll equate to certain amounts of credits that they'll get in order to receive a part of the incentive amount, and that's how this agreement's structured. So it's totally reimbursable based on job creation that AWC brings into the city of Port Arthur.
What Kate's saying, they will not get anything from us until they produce the payroll. Once they produce the payroll, we're going to, I think it's $6.65. For every $6.65 of payroll they produce, we give them $1 credit toward the $100. So, as Kate said, once they make the payroll, we look at the W-2s and we will reimburse them up to that $100,000.
Right. The incentive amount is just $100,000, so it cannot exceed that amount, but they get $1 credit for each $6.65 of payroll they create.
Move we approve the contract.
Second.
And second to approve the contract. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries. Agenda item number 7. I want to start by saying agenda item number 7 is for discussion purposes only. It is really because we have had questions about what a 4B EDC is and what that means, and so we opened it up because there were several of our board members who had questions, and so that we could get it on the table to discuss it. It's strictly for discussion only tonight. Mr. Baptiste.
Kate did an excellent PowerPoint on the Economic Development Corporation, Type A and Type B from the Act. And I also provided you guys in your handout a copy of information on a Type A and a Type B. And Kate's going to give you guys the legal term. I'm going to give you all the layman terms, okay? The city of Port Arthur get $0.015 on, when you go to the store, that's 8 1/4 sales tax that you pay. Of that 8 1/4 cent, the city get $0.015. Okay? We get, when I say we, EDC get 1/2 cent from the city. So half of that 1.5 cent is dedicated strictly for economic development. A community in the state of Texas, any and all communities, could elect to have a Type A or a Type B Economic Development Corporation. This community elected to have a Type A. And that happened back in 79, somewhere back then. No, not that far. 96, 97, right.
Was whenever the act started. But.
And they could allocate the whole 1/2 cent to where they want that economic, the type of economic development they want to have, okay? Or a community could have a Type B. It could have an A and a B. Our neighboring community, Needland, Port Neches, and Grove, they have Type B. And I'll tell you guys the difference between A and B. A is very restricted. It's industrial, manufactured, job creation. That's it. B is industrial, manufactured, job creation, and quality of life. The difference is quality of life with B. And I try to get, and you could dedicate whatever percent of that half to, if you're going to have a, you could also have an A and a B.
Nomination.
And you could dedicate whatever percent of that half to the A and to the B. You could dedicate, and it has to be dedicated within 1/8 of a cent. 1/8, 1/4, 3/8, and a half. You have to dedicate 1/8 to, you know, when last year when we went to the voters and we dedicated 1/8 of our sales tax from 4A to street and maintenance. It's always, when you dedicate 1/8. So currently, we're receiving 3/8, and the city is receiving 1/8 for street and maintenance, and that money is dedicated to street and maintenance only. It's audited for street and maintenance, so you can't spend it no other way. B is a different corporation. It's a totally separate corporation. A has a corporation, B is a corporation, and Kate give you the legal terms, but A has a board, B has a board. The difference between A board and B board, on B board, council people could serve. Up to 3 or 4, okay?
4.
Up to 4 council people could serve on the B board. And they manage that portion of the economic development dollars that's allocated toward the B corporation. Yes, sir.
Because there are 8 council people and the mayor making up 9 persons on that board, you only get 4 people off there. How are those 4 selected?
Council select. Now, for discussion purpose, I spoke to Ms. Holmes and some other board members, and I think I spoke to you, Mr. Mark. because of where we are in our community, I'm recommending us consider a B, a portion of our money to be allocated for a B. But I would recommend that only if the council would agree to allow this board to serve as the B board. Because this board, you know, you guys deal with economic development on the industrial job creation, and I think you could deal with it more holistic when because you guys know what's going on out there. You'll have a better picture. That's where your focus is at, economic development. And my recommendation would be that the council select 7 board members from A to serve on the B corporation. And that can happen. Is that correct?
Right, it can, but the council does get to, they're the ones who appoint it. A type B corporation has 7 members. 4 can be either city council members or city employees. 3 can't be. The main thing we want you to understand, like Mr. Batiste said, it's a totally separate corporate entity. It could have, I'm just throwing all of the options out there. It could have different consultants. It could have a different CEO. It could have a different staff. You have to keep different books, different audits. It's a totally separate corporation. We represent a lot of type B corporations. There's a couple more, even though the projects are less restrictive, they have restrictions on another side. Before you can have a project, you have to have a public hearing, post it to the public. So instead of coming to a meeting like you do now and approving an incentive, you just have to have a public hearing, and then you wait 60 days to see if anyone comes forward with any issues with it, and then thereafter you would approve the incentive. With a type A corporation, you do have more restrictions. However, I did look today, and as you know, this EDC has gone to the voters numerous times to use type A funds for type B projects. You can do that, and I double-checked today in the Economic Development Handbook and the Local Government Code, and there aren't any restrictions on necessary time length for how long you have a ballot proposition in effect. So, for instance, if you wanted to go to the voters and say, we want to use our type A funds for open space improvements or et cetera, anything type B allows, and we want to do it for 5 years, and then we'll bring it to the council, and they can renew it again for 5 years. You can do that. So anyways, a type A corporation has that ability, but I guess Guy and I just want to emphasize that it's a totally, if you did go with type B, it's a totally separate corporate entity. For either way, if you want to do a ballot proposition to use type A funds for type B projects, or if you wanted to create a type B corporation, you have to call your election by February 16th, 2018 to get it on the May ballot, which means council would have to actually approve it before then. So you're on kind of a short timeline for calling and getting everything set up. But we just want you to understand that we did look, and as far as ballot propositions go, for type A funds to be used for type B, there isn't a set time limit, so that is an option as a type A that you have. And if you wanted to do type B, Mr. Batiste, yes, there's nothing hindering the council from keeping the same board members, 7 board members from this EDC, to put them on the other type B, but there is risk involved as well. So,
Yes.
Mr. Marks.
In your experience with type B entities, or when the development of, say, a downtown area is on the table, or I should say the redevelopment in our case, having a type B entity will allow us as a board to actually help incentivize those businesses that want to move into downtown, which is going to enhance our quality of life, which will attract more businesses and more people towards downtown. Is that the experience that you've had? And the reason I ask that question is because we have a plan that's been on the, I think we spent $350,000 to put that plan together 4 or 5 years ago, and we're moving towards it, but it's pretty slow. The pace is slow. And I was thinking when my discussions with Mr. Baptiste that having a B entity or corporation would actually expedite that process, being that we've already spent money on a plan. Can you see that happening with us going to a B, that we can actually expedite our redevelopment of our downtown area?
I don't know if a type B corporation would necessarily expedite the redevelopment. What we see is just different incentives being given. For instance, you can make a public park improvement, you can help a small restaurant. You're just not as restrictive, it's not as heavy on the industrial side. So I have to say, in my experience with the type Bs, they still are heavily after the large industry to come in because that's what's going to spur more tax revenue to the city. But a lot of the incentives they're giving out are just incentives on a lot smaller scale, like for a mom and pop restaurant, those types of incentives. So it's not necessarily expediting the redevelopment, it's just you have a couple more options and you're not as restricted on what kind of incentives you're going to give out.
Let me try to respond to Mr. Mark. What Kate said, remember what we said earlier, a type B, you could do everything you do in A. And it depends what come your way. But having a B and an A, it allows you to put aside funds so that you could leverage that funds for those things that you do want. Quality of life, open space, a civic center, an amphitheater. You know, we could depend upon the city to do those things, but that's not going to happen because they're too busy fixing street, water line, and picking up trash. And if you look in Texas, the majority of the communities, we have a lot that's just A, but the majority of them, 264 of them are B, because it provides a quality of life to the community. And the B, what it does, it takes that 1/8, and if you don't do anything with it for the next 2 years, I showed you early, you save $1 million, you gave the city $1,100,000 last year. If you put $1,100,000 a year aside for 3 years, you got $3 million to leverage to do other things that you want to do. On the other side of the thing, when you look at Southeast Texas, you know, you hear expansion, you hear LNGs. There is so much job here, you know, and I could tell you, right now, I'm dealing with 3 clients that's looking to come here. We don't have to go find them anymore because who we are and where we are. I think we need to put more emphasis on quality of life and how to bring people to this town. And that's why I'm making the recommendation that we need to start having some money set aside for B, because the city not going to do it. They fixing street, water line, and picking up trash. That's all they're doing.
I understand the differences between the A and the B Corp. I guess my question is this: why can't we, as an A Corp, set aside money to do B projects and bring those to the voters? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Kate said that even if we are a B Corp, you still have to put it out to the public. You're still going to face the same scrutiny, and there's still opposition that can be faced. But if you just put it there and bring it to the voters, then they can say at the ballot whether they agree or not without all of the extra bickering. That's my thinking. I mean, couldn't we just say as an A Corp, we want to put aside a certain amount of money and work on doing B projects?
But you have to be very specific when you go to the voters. You have to tell the voters exactly what you want to do with this money, and there's not a time limit. We could just say, we want to do landscaping of this community for the next 10 years, and we want to set aside $500,000 a year to do it. But you have to be very specific, and that's all you could do.
So a Type B corporation is governed by Chapter 505. We're governed by 504. But 505.152 lists projects related to recreational or community facilities. So I'm not going to read the whole list, but it basically is quality of life improvements. So if you went to the voters, you could take this language and put that specifically in your ballot proposition to say you wanted to set aside X amount of funds for the next X amount of years to be used for these Type B authorized projects, and those are found here. And you could, to answer your question, you could put that in the ballot proposition. You have to be specific, but you would just take the statute and put it in your ballot proposition.
See, the problem I would have with that, Kate, is because, and I certainly understand what you're saying, but the concern I would have with that is we would actually have to know the cost of the project. If we don't know the cost of the project, how can we determine how much to set aside? Especially when you have a laundry list of projects.
I don't think you have to know the exact cost of that project, but you do have to set aside your certain amount. I know previously for downtown, I think the EDC set aside each year $300,000. So the board would have to decide how much per year you want to set aside for those projects. And the restriction would come is if an amphitheater needed to be built and it exceeded the amount you'd put in your budget for that year, it would hinder you from going forward with the project. So that's the restriction with a ballot proposition versus just creating your whole Type B corporation. But there are pros and cons to both sides.
But let me, oh, go ahead.
What would be the cost of every ballot proposition? I mean, because if we do that, we're going to have to take it to the voters. It is going to cost, right?
Every time, since I've been here, and I've been here 12 years, I've been to the voters 6 times. And we were very specific. We said we wanted to do parks.
Yeah.
So we spent money in the park. We said we wanted to do downtown improvements. So we did that. We said we wanted to do demolition. We did that. You know, every time you go tell them
just
what you
for that one
do.
item. And you want to just have it to where you're able to, you know, play with the money wherever you decide to put it, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, my deal is with the money, and it is the money. It is, I don't see it 1 or 2 years from now. I see it 5 years from now when I have $500,000 or $5 million in a B account, and I could go leverage that money and go get me $20 million to do something. Right now, I can't do anything of quality of life because we have no money. I can't leverage nothing. I can't leverage A funds for a B project. And that's, in the next couple of years, you guys know, we talking here, there's going to be a lot of money flowing in this community. But when the money dries up, what's going to happen? Where are we going to go?
And I have that issue right now because, you know, I'm a builder. I build a lot of houses. And,
yes, sir.
And we have all the work here, but everybody wants to build in, you know, neighboring cities. So I build for a lot of people that are moving from here over there, and that's one of the things I want to do. I want to try to keep them here.
Yeah. And that's the intent. We have to make this community a more livable community.
I agree.
Are you saying that one of the terms for us to have this election is the city council has to agree to have the B board run the A corporation? Who's to say they can't come in a year later and then put 3 or 4 of them on there, and now we don't have control of our money?
No one's.
Am I barking up the wrong tree there?
No, you're barking up the right tree, because that could happen. That could happen.
I love y'all.
That could happen.
The way some of them act, I don't know.
And that was my question, because you talked about having 7 members of this board be on the B board. Is there any laws on the books that says that we can't do that?
There's nothing that says that 7 members from this board cannot serve on the B board. If the city council appoints 7 members from this board, you can sit on the B board. But if they wanted to appoint the mayor on the board, like I said, most of our type B corporations have a couple city council members on them. Because you're just allowed to do that, whereas a type A you're not. So, but there's nothing that prohibits them from keeping the same people, 7 of you guys, and putting them on a type B board. There isn't anything prohibiting that.
On the B, we have control of our money. On the A, we've got control of our money.
And on the B,
And it's not going anywhere, right?
well,
When I went to basic training, one of the things that they told us that, you've got to watch out for your city council.
yes, sir.
Because they want to get
Yes,
your
sir.
bank
They
account
wanna get your
bad.
money. Yes, sir.
They want your money, so
But, and I just want to throw out there, because in discussions, not only with Mr. Baptiste and talked to several of council members and everything, we're all in this for the same thing, the best interest of our community. And we want to move this community forward. Having been on the school board and having heard the stories of realtors telling people when they're moving here to work at these plants, so you don't want to even think about moving to Port Arthur. Anywhere but Port Arthur. So what are we going to do as an EDC, as a city council, as a school board, as a port? What are we going to do to make this place more palatable for people who are moving here for all those jobs at LNG or Motiva or Total or whatever, where their kids we will have their kids going to school in these school districts here. We have to sit down as entities and talk about what we need to do. And then if the city, after we have these discussions, if the city council decides they want 4 people on that board, then they can do that. But as long as they have the best interest of this community at heart, and that's what we have to emphasize when we start talking about putting this on the ballot. We can no longer operate as individual entities. We have to work together. And I applaud Mr. Baptiste for putting a workshop together in January and February so that we can have that discussion and we can see what we can do, because if we keep traveling the path that we're traveling right now, we're going to lose more people and we're going to start losing all that government money because of census and everything else. So it's on us to communicate with the other entities and see what is in the best interest of Port Arthur.
Kate, you talked about pros and cons. What are some of the pros and cons?
Yes, I think some of the pros for a type A is just, when I talked about pros and cons, I didn't mean between type B and type A Generically, I meant for you guys just staying in type A and doing a ballot proposition versus creating. So the pros to going to the voters and creating a brand new type B corporation is like what Mr. Batiste said. It's a totally different corporation with more flexibility on what you can do. You would have that revenue that you could set aside. You wouldn't have any sort of fiscal year constraints on how much you put towards it, et cetera. I guess the cons for creating a brand new type B corporation is there's a chance that it would be different board members with different consultants, et cetera, that you would have no control over, because that would be the city in that court. That it's a totally different entity, different books, et cetera. So the city would just have to understand that you would have to keep everything separate, and so there just opens up more people, different people potentially operating your type B corporation. If you went to the voters with just a type A, with the type A and do the ballot proposition for a type B project, like Mr. Batiste said, you're going to be a little more limited, because you have to say, and each year we're only going to set aside $500,000 for this, and if you wanted to redo a civic center, amphitheater, put hiking trails, et cetera, and it exceeded that amount, you might not be able to do as many projects, et cetera, as you want. But the pro would be it's the same board, same people, so you would have the control over that money, whereas the type B would be a totally different corporation. Like I said, we represent both. Both of them have great community development. I agree with Mr. Marks. Everyone needs to work together to make the community better. So ultimately, it's you guys' decision, but you do have to make the decision and make sure you call your election by, the drop dead date's February 16th, but I know in the past, usually the EDC makes their decision and then it'll go to the council. So you just have to keep that timeline in mind for both, whether you create a new entity or if you just do a type A, get authorized to do type B projects.
If we wanted to implement, say, our current plan, could we, in a type A, go to the voters with our current redevelopment plan, and go to the voters in May and say, we want to set aside this amount of money for this specific part of the project?
I don't think anything would prohibit you from doing that. I think the fear, Mr. Batiste, it's just the dollar amount, how much you would set aside, and if for some reason that project exceeded that dollar amount for that year. But no, you could do that.
But the question is, the money still exists, correct? The money would be, then council could take that and move forward with that project. In theory. I mean, I know that they're working on other projects, infrastructure from the storm.
I mean, what you guys did with the streets, et cetera, y'all had a ballot proposition. They used those funds for street maintenance. So
I will say to this board, we gave the city $1,070,900, and the numbers I gave you, the city has not spent $1 of that on streets yet. Not $1. And let me say this. I've been here 12 years. Kate, we went to the legislators when in what year? 12? Right. We had accumulated so much money in our fund balance. We had over $12 million, and it just sits there. So we start playing Santa Claus, guy. We helped build a dormitory. We helped put some streets together. We did a pavilion. We did the parks. We just had so much money. And I think, especially now, after Harvey, this city needs to have dedicated funds to make it a better city, instead of just having that money sitting in the bank. You know, we need to use that money to make it better for the people. And David, I have some concern about the council. I have some concern, man, because I don't think they see the whole picture like you guys. You know, they're not economic development. They call politicians rather. You know, but anyway.
Well, yes, go ahead.
What I wanted to say is, I believe that we have to do something to better our city. I believe that most people that are involved in the city have the city's best interests at heart, whether elected or appointed. I also believe that money needs to be allocated to do that. I believe we have the funds as the EDC to do that. What I'm not sold on is, does that mean creating a totally different entity, or does that mean us sitting down and doing some planning? Because either way, the plan still has to be in place. A dollar amount still has to be figured up. The only difference is we have to be more to the number if we remain an A. And if we go to a B, we have the opportunity to go back and say, oh, we missed it by a little bit, let's continue to go. And I think that's just all in planning. I mean, most of us are in business, have been in business. You know how it goes. You try to plan to the T, because if you miss just one little thing, it throws you off. So if we just do our work and go to the voters with a number that will work, and Mr. Baptiste, you said it yourself, that you're talking about setting aside this 1.3 million or this 1/8% aside for at least 3 years before even trying to do something at all. So I think that would work whether we were A or a B. It's just going to be what seems to be best for the city at that particular time. That's my thoughts toward that.
I agree with you, Mr. Anderson. I think planning is very important, and I think as we have council members who are interested in our community, we have people who are not elected who are interested in our community, and it's coming together to decide, to make that determination, whether or not we want to move forward with a project, whether or not we want where we want to go and how we want to get there. I mean, I know that there are elected officials who care and who want to see a difference in this community. Mr. Stickley?
I'm just thinking about the operation of it. You know, if it was totally separate from this, then you're talking about basically doubling the cost of operating, you know, the commission. If this board is on that board too, I don't see that it would be a problem consolidating the operations, except keeping the books separate. Am I correct in that? Like electric bill, office space,
Right.
the whole deal, yeah.
If you would have to have two separate meetings, so
Right.
your two entities.
Right.
So the people who were, say that council puts 7 of you guys on that board, you just have to give up a little more of your time, which I know y'all would be willing to for the community. But yes, if they kept everything the same, it would more or less just be more work on the current staff to make sure they kept everything separated. But as far as legally, there's
Mainly financial though, right?
basically financial.
Yeah.
And then again, like Open Meetings Act, et cetera, you'd have to have 2 sets of minutes, 2 agendas,
Right.
just everything would have to be as separate as it could be because you are a different entity, but nothing prohibits the same people doing the same things for both corporations.
Let me ask you this, Kate. I certainly hear what the board members are saying. Is it possible for us to dedicate a dollar amount for 3 years or 4 years on 4B projects to be named, or that project have to be named?
Well, what I'm hearing from the board is, and again, y'all would have to look, is in that section of 505.152, the list it has in here, it talks about, it's all projects related to recreational or community facilities. I don't think you have to necessarily put in the ballot proposition, we're going to build a brand new civic center and we're going to put this amount. I don't think the law requires that. My understanding is if you took the language in the code under projects related to recreational or community facilities, and you put that in the ballot proposition, and then you put, we're going to set aside $1 million or however much, I think you'd be fine.
One more thing to what Mr. Marks said, because that's another important thing about being able to give incentives to those smaller businesses that will come in. Is there something there that we could actually bring to the voters as well to do incentives for them, or is that only if we're a B Corp?
The Development Corporation Act allows you, as a Type A, to bring to the voters any Type B project. So I'd have to look into it to see if we would potentially need 2 ballot propositions, maybe one for community improvement, such as parks, amphitheaters, civic centers, and then maybe one to address more of the small business aspect. So I'll have to just get back to you on the best way to handle that. But there's nothing that prohibits how many ballot propositions you have, the time, or the amount. It just says as long as the voters are made aware of what you're using the funds for, you meet the statutory requirements. And then you just have to have a hearing 30 days before the election just to inform the voters of what you guys are doing.
Any other questions or comments? Any other thoughts? Well, we have some food for thought. And so if we need to come back for further discussion, we can do that. If we have any further questions or comments, we can do that.
Being that we do have food for thought, can we talk about this at the January meeting to see where we want to go?
Certainly.
Because we have that February 16th drop dead date if we're going to put something on the ballot.
And there may be a need to call a meeting before that because it has to go to council for their approval to get it on the ballot. So we can't be too close to that. So it may be before that January meeting sometime. I'll talk to Mr. Baptiste about that.
Talk with Kate and Guy and see a timeline. May have to call a special meeting.
Right. Right. Okay. Do we have any?
Thank y'all very much.
Do we have any executive items? Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
Executive session. There's a food item.
I move the meeting be adjourned.
Okay. It's been moved.
Second.
It's been moved and second to adjourn the meeting of the EDC at, time is it?
Time is 7:20.
At 7:20. Aye. Aye. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries.
Merry
Good evening.
Christmas.